To be here. Thanks for asking me, Taylor, to speak. And usually, as Shrikant mentioned, I'm talking about near-death experience, not because I've ever wanted to talk about near-death experience, because it's something that you don't really want to get good at. But I had it happen to me 3 times over the course of 15 years. And the reason why it's so important, meditation is so important to me, is because the things that happened to me in those experiences didn't really crystallize in me until I gained a meditation practice. In terms of my history, I came from I had a difficult childhood, and I started studying martial arts when I was a kid. And so I had a sifu, I had a teacher who taught me some meditation when I was just a kid. I liked, punching the bag and doing kicks like Bruce Lee and stuff like that. But he would settle us down, and that was the first time that I really experienced it. Later in life, I would try to apply meditation when I was in some kind of difficult situation, usually. Lots of times that was the wrong time to be doing it, because my mind was so full of things that I couldn't possibly get rid of all the ideas that I had. I had these experiences that, while being a skeptic, still made me realize that that this is an extra dimensional life that we're living, and that we have this potential, that what we really have in this life is kind of a perception problem. We're limited by the constraints of being human. So when we're meditating, what we're really trying to do lots of times is to find freedom from ourselves. And what that generally means is freedom from the ongoing inner dialogue that one has, that constantly wants to compare and label, judge things, that sort of stuff, which is just sort of automatically a human experience. I started to kind of realize these near-death experiences in my life, and I had a kind of a transformative experience around 9/11. I ended up getting a little house up on the upper Delaware River, up Sullivan County, Wayne County, in that direction, if you're in the New York area. And I literally sat on a rock by the river for years, developing a meditation practice. And meditation, it's kind of like golf. You think you're gonna do it you think you're gonna do it to relax. And then when you start, you jump into it, it's not very relaxing because you're not very good at it. So meditation is a practice too. And once I had practiced it enough, I started to have these experiences that brought back the near-death experiences that I had. These feelings of a transcendent unity, mostly. I've written a lot about it, so I'm going to read a little bit about it from the meditation chapter in my latest book, which is How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. That's the important part, without really dying. Meditation changes everything because it functions for us in profoundly practical ways. By fortifying our emotional stability, intellectual understanding, and physical wellness, and as a catalyst of our spiritual potential, by awakening transpersonal powers of intuition and sensory expansion. Without sounding too otherworldly, I'd like to testify that meditation is otherworldly, the opening within ourselves to an extrasensory dimension, a realm of love and positive perception that we could call heaven. Near-death survivors, like myself, will tell you that there's something very different about, quote unquote, the other side. And it was true for me all 3 times that I experienced it. The experiences of myself and my reality were completely different from anything I'd ever known before. It wasn't like a dream. It wasn't as disconnected or random. I felt very, very alive in a kind of a boundarylessness, indescribably sort of effervescent way. I experienced no sense of anxiety at all. I felt absolute peace and ease. I wasn't attached to my thought process, to my serial thought process as in normal life. Instead, I was connected in a way I've never felt before, as though I'd been integrated into a grounded, expansive mind that was everywhere an intelligence that I wasn't generating, but was contained by. So those three sensations of conscious awareness, the aliveness, the ease of being, and the connectedness that I experienced while I was totally unconscious, are feelings I never consciously experienced again until I began meditating. I can understand how someone might think that sitting in meditation would be a terribly boring thing to do. Trying to think about not thinking sounds a little pointless. The first things that came to my mind when I first tried to meditate were mostly those default feelings of resistance, like I really didn't want to sit here doing nothing. Now I can't imagine life without it. I've discovered that meditation can and will open an interdimensional channel within me by just sitting in one place, which is a pretty life-changing thing to have happen for you while you're sitting around doing nothing. If you give it a try, meditation will literally change your mind. At first, when we sit and try not to think, we tend to fail because we're so accustomed to identifying our life, ourselves, with our thought process. Try not to think, and then that stuff starts popping up, particularly like, I only have a half an hour to do this, or how much longer is coronavirus going to last, or now is that comet going to strike the earth? That's just what we need, or what am I going to have for dinner tonight? This stuff is random. These mostly unrelated thoughts occur in serial fashion, that is, one leading haphazardly to the next, sometimes connected by the barest thread that only makes sense right at the moment it connects. A few more turns of the wheel down that road, you can't even remember how you got there or why, because there is no why. That's just how our mental processes work when we're not paying attention. Our typical thought process is created by the incessantly demanding nature of our thinking organ, which is our brain. It's like some kind of wild prehistoric shark that instinctively insists on constant movement. And it's that restless, relentless movement that leads us to what the Buddha warned of when he said, and I paraphrase, "We are created by our thoughts. We become what we think. Pain and suffering follow negative thoughts, like the wheel follows the ox that pulls it." So 1 minute we're fine, and the next we're stuck in an uncomfortable place. An important lesson that meditation taught me that you may have never considered is thought requires consciousness, but consciousness does not require thought. So all of us have experienced that liberating feeling we get when we don't have a thought in our head, when we don't have a care in the world. Practicing meditation can make that feeling an option, a regular option, not just a fleeting moment of mental freedom. The problems occur, for me, and I presume for everyone else, when thoughts become unintentionally painful and start cascading down into places we really don't want them to go. When we're swept up and our mind becomes uncontrollably reactive, and we can suddenly think our way straight into a little hell of our own making, which is pretty easy to do these days. But with a little practice, most of us can stop that process by being mindful. And the simplest form of that discipline, that mindfulness, is that self-request that we all make at some point or another. I don't even want to think about it anymore. And then we don't think about it anymore. We're all already doing it a lot of the time. Meditation helps us formalize that discipline and gives us the option to exert more control over our thinking process. That's all, but that's a great deal. Imagine being able to witness more of the sanity, clarity, and beauty of life as a regular product of a healthy thought process, instead of being subject to wayward negativity. Imagine being able to encourage more relaxed, conscious awareness all the time. When we sit in meditation, we're really trying to witness and objectify this serial inner monologue and to try to wear it down until it begins to submit, or to sidestep it completely, like a bullfighter, or more literally like a bull avoider. That sideways simile describes what our appropriately named right brain is doing, while our left brain is acting as a serial processor, calculating, organizing, arranging things. The right hemisphere of our brain functions concurrently as a kind of parallel processor. connecting our sensory experiences holistically, engaging non-ordinary perception, that's just beyond just being human, right? Which leads to a much easier and more appreciative experience of life. Your right brain is in play when you experience beauty, art, creativity, melody, sadness, serenity, happiness, all those wonderful, intangible, unrealistic joys of life. It engages whenever you're looking for and hopefully finding emotional resonance and love. Unfortunately, our right brain gets short shrift because of the sequentially demanding nature of contemporary life. Go there, do this, do that. Our ego can manifest a kind of cognitive dissonance, ignoring the holistic data enjoyed in our right brain because it doesn't support a realistic enough worldview. It has nothing to do with the demanding inventories and elaborate justifications that your realistic ego insists on. Get real, people exclaim, which usually means get negative. When we start being able to sit longer in meditation, we can consciously engage that holistic experience and hold ourselves in a balanced state where we discover that the most demanding thoughts aren't really that important at all. Life can be experienced in a more realistic way when we're in this way less realistic, because we recognize the actual moment we're living in is fine as it is. Life isn't really full of sequential demands or threatening realities at all. Those are mostly imaginary delusions thrown out by our prehistoric ego. Equipped with the conscious awareness that a meditation practice gives us, we can start freeing ourselves from unnecessarily demanding thoughts. Nothing really needs to happen right at this moment, unless a bear is heading your way or you're sitting on something wet. Even now, just as a sidetrack, even now when we have this stuff that really is important, that really is serious, that really is dangerous in our life, we still get the pain and the suffering from fear, which is projecting into the future, that we're afraid that we're going to lose something or not get something that we want, or that something is coming to get us. We're using a negative imagination projecting into the future. So being in the moment, like meditation requires you to be, is quite a relief because you recognize that this moment is just fine. It's okay, just like it is. The escape from serial thinking delivers us into presence and the power and comfort alive in the eternal moment. I use that term because I've always been alive in this moment. We're always experiencing this moment. Everything else changes about me. I start losing hair, I gain weight, I get old, all these things happen, but the experience of this moment has not changed very much for me in my entire life. And it never does, and it didn't when I had these near-death experiences too. So like, beyond life, I was still living in this moment. It's a presence. It's a presence for life.
Can we ask questions? Shall we go ahead and go to questions, or would you like to finish off your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to finish off in just a couple more minutes.
Okay, that sounds good.
This escape from serial thinking, it's a presence for life that's only possible when we can gain some control on the courses we run through our heads. And meditation allows us an easy awareness of those different parts of inner life. As we sit making space in our thoughts, we experience a sense of joyful transcendence and a sense of unity that's impossible to experience when we're pent up and weighed down by material demands. There's the presence of graceful, intuitive intelligence rising up through our spacious thinking, informing our decision-making and problem-solving with fresher clarity and confidence. Getting our mind to become accustomed to that sounds good. It really does. And the things that I've found, the three things that meditation has done for me, and that are serve as goals when I'm meditating too, to develop a deeper sense of presence and an immediate sensation of life in the eternal moment, so that I can recognize that I'm okay in this moment, that things are all right, and I can figure out a way to deal with them if they're not. To become a witness to our thoughts and gain control over the quality and direction of our thought process, separating our true self from our delusional imagination. So becoming a witness, or what's in Hindu is called sakshi, I believe, where you become a witness to your actual thought process and then identify yourself with the witness so that you can recognize this mental process as being a separate thing from your authentic self. In a way, this is individuation that Jung talks about too, is finding this animus mundi, this place where you exist without being part of all the things you imagine yourself to be. And the third place, and where I'll stop here, is to unite that authentic inner self with all divine being, love, and life in the universe. That when you're sitting in that moment of kind of clarity, and you're in a space in between thoughts, and we'll experiment with this in just a little while, there's a transcendent unity and a sense of belonging to everything and everything belonging to you, too, that you can really only get through meditation. So that's a good place to stop, probably, for that, so that we can ask some questions.
Okay.
And
very good. Folks, so you can go ahead and ask questions in 3 ways. You can just type in an exclamation mark in the chat channel. You can raise your hand in Zoom app, or thirdly, you can just type in your question. So whatever you prefer. So Taylor and I will start off with the questions, but please go ahead and line up for questions. Go from there. Taylor, go ahead.
Okay, so one of my questions is that if you had kind of like one practical tool for someone who's maybe just getting started in meditation, and how to kind of access what they can use to access this type of presence and this type of perception that you described.
yeah, and I'll use. I had 3 different kinds of near-death experiences, and one of them was an out-of-body experience where I witnessed myself in the car accident below me, but I wasn't there anymore. And that gave me this sense of spiritual perspective that's, I think, maybe difficult to get in any other way, but it can be approximated in meditation. If you sit quietly and you imagine yourself in a movie theater, and on the screen in front of you, a dark movie theater, on the screen in front of you is the next thought that comes into your head. I call this analytical meditation. So here comes a thought into your head. It might be like, what sort of thought am I going to be thinking? Maybe I'm not supposed to be thinking when I meditate. Whatever that thought is, the first thought that comes into your mind, you remove yourself, you compassionately detach from whatever that statement is inside of your head and witness it. And then as you sit, you invariably get caught up in thoughts, like you're constantly running through your mind. And so this kind of objectification of your thinking, like a real objectification of it. For example, you might start thinking about, how am I going to make my rent this month? Well, you will always start hearing a voice in your head saying the same thing about that. It usually starts the same way. And if you're sitting in meditation, you can hear that circuit, that loop, start up and recognize it. And you know where it's going to go. And so detach yourself from it and witness it as best as you can. You may have to play it through a few times. You may have to wear it out, kind of. But eventually you'll get to a place where, when these spontaneous thoughts pop up in your thinking organ, in your brain, you will be a witness to it and be able to say, you know something, I don't want to think about that right now. I would prefer to direct my thoughts elsewhere, preferably while meditating, into a space of sort of divine luminous nothingness. That would be great, you know. So objectively becoming a witness to your thoughts is probably my biggest tip for meditation.
Wonderful. Let's start taking questions. There are lots of questions coming in from the attendees. So it's going to be Olya, then Caroline, then Matthias, and then V. So the rules are very simple. We have 4 rules that we've used in our meetups. One is you raise your hand when you want to speak. You can raise your hand by typing a question, typing exclamation mark, or raising the hand in Zoom. Number 2, keep on topic. We're talking about meditation and what it can do for us. Number 3, be brief so that we can get to as many questions as we can. And number 4, feel free to disagree with anything, but please be courteous. It doesn't need to be said on this particular topic, but all right, Olia, you're next.
Hi, Robert. So my question is, was there a breaking point at which you started meditating regularly, like every day? Because it seems it's really hard. I start and go. I mean, I start and don't meditate for a long time, and then something brings me back. But how did you develop a regular practice? Did anything help?
Yeah, and it's not the kind of thing that you can directly give to anybody else because, like I said, I got this little house up on the upper Delaware River, and I started leaving town as soon as I possibly could each week and going there and sitting by the river. And so it was just such a conducive spot for it. Of course, I carried on my meditation practice at home. And I think that it's kind of what I was talking about when I started off, that it's like you think you're going to learn how to play golf to relax, and then you can't do it very well. And so it's not relaxing at all because you're not that good at it. You have to keep at it. It is a practice. So you have to sit and give yourself 10 minutes, if that's all that you can do, and do it bit by bit, and don't hold yourself to any kind of standard or some kind of, supreme ideal that you're supposed to reach immediately. It's all right. And take the opportunity during the course of the day to recognize when there are meditative moments in your regular activities. If you just want to procrastinate for a minute, if you've got something you want to do, but you don't want to do it right now, take that moment to stop, center yourself, take a deep breath, enter into the moment, this eternal moment. Just like when you were a little kid, you were in this moment. When you were a teenager, you were in this moment. Now you're in this moment. Enter into it, right? And have this kind of awareness or mindfulness, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, even if it's just for the time that you were procrastinating. Then when you go back to what you're doing, you're actually going to be better at what you're doing because you're more balanced, you're more grounded, and you feel a little bit better about everything.
Thanks.
Okay. Next question is from Caroline. Caroline, go ahead.
Hi, so on the Meetup page, I saw that you cited there's 3 keys to your life being radical kindness, radical forgiveness, and radical surrender. So I was just curious if you could expand a little more on one of those in relation to how it's shaped your meditation practice.
Well, radical kindness has shaped my life. And that's the thing that I always encourage you to take that as a challenge. Just go about your business being as kind, as sincerely kind as you can be to people, and watch what happens. In terms of the meditative practice, though, radical forgiveness or radical surrender would definitely be more a part of that. And let me take radical surrender for that. There's a Native American expression that I really love, which is, when you get tired of paddling upstream, turn around. When you're sitting in meditation and you're allowing yourself just to be in that present moment, and you start to have these thoughts that you don't want to think about, and so using this kind of objective witnessing of your own thoughts, you can detach yourself from them for a second. You can realize that whatever is making the world turn around and making the flowers blossom is happening in your life too, right now. And that most of the time, the evidence of it is pretty good. I'm okay. I've gone through some terrible stuff in my life, and everybody does, and that's inevitable. Even when it's at its worst nowadays, I can realize that in that moment, I can surrender into this power of being, what I call divine consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental. I'm not responsible for it all. It's all out there and I'm a part of it. And that kind of radical surrender into that then really frees you from a lot of the things that you think you're responsible for, expectations that you might have. Expectations are premeditated resentments. It's one of my favorite expressions. And so radical surrender, or that understanding that I'm being carried by the force of my life, by the karma that I am holding with me and generating, that I'm creating all the time. I'm projecting that karma into my future to precondition what's coming as I float downstream. Those are the kinds of things that are wonderful to keep in one's mind while meditating. And I would place that as devotional meditation, or meditation where you are focused on a higher power, on Jesus or the Buddha or an oak tree or the light off of a lake, or, you know, a kitten at play or something like that, you know, something that is indicative of divine consciousness. So I think radical surrender is good for meditation.
Now, Olia had a follow-up question regarding that. She asks, why is radical kindness so important to you?
When you try radical kindness out, it helps you escape that sort of judgmental and comparative inner voice that you have. You'll see somebody and your mind will say, well, they look like a spoiled rich kid to me. They probably got everything handed to them on a platter, and you know nothing about them, actually. I'll speak for myself, okay? I'm capable of this kind of thinking. And so that kind of attachment or labeling can be really destructive. If you stop right then and you open your heart and you look at them as another person who's struggling with all the same problems you have, and you extend to them this kind of open-hearted, unconditional kindness, you know, or you look at them and it's okay. You will discover that there is an underground network of that everywhere. You'll walk into places with that in your heart, just carrying that energy. And as you look around a crowded room where people are possibly, well, we don't look around crowded rooms that much right now, but when we will, again, I presume, or in a space that's socially distanced appropriately, people want what they want and there's some kind of agitation going on. It's not unusual at all to meet eyes with somebody from across the room who's looking at you like, hello, you know, because you are projecting from your heart the energy of kindness, the sincere identification with one another, the recognition of what in Islam is called the friend, what Rumi would call the friend. You see this person that you are meant to be with, and you find that there is this kind of fabric woven through all of life of kindness. There's a bunch of really nice people out there all the time, and you become part of it. You become picked up in it and carried, and you're able then to pick up other people and carry them with you in this way. And it is probably the single most transformative life technique that I've ever encountered, is radical kindness.
Thank you. Next question is from Matthias. Matthias, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Robert, for being here first. In my experience, the deepest sense of mindfulness and awareness that I've had has been on silent meditation retreats. And that's come after a period where my mind's been very still from sitting, you know, all day, most days. And I'm wondering, can that same state be reached, and how do I go about doing that from just having a daily meditation practice? Thank you.
Well, you know, just judging by the way you sound right now, I think you have some of it. I mean, you're relating to me experiences that a lot of people most people, in fact, don't identify with. Most people don't go on silent meditation retreats, so they don't really even know what you're talking about. I think that at any moment, the way that I try to deal with it is I enter into the moment itself. I ground myself in this eternal space where I'm always alive right now. And I recognize that I'm safe and things are okay here. And then I can cast my mind or my imagination back to that time that I spent on the rock by the river. I can even imagine the scene of the river. Like right now, I am practically there again in my mind, talking to you. And so this kind of extra dimensional, transpersonal connection that we have with all of our experience that always is happening in this moment, it's accessible to us right now, too. It's accessible to you. You can enter into that. You can just take a second and you're there, right? I mean, I don't know what the circumstances were of your meditation retreat, but right in this moment, I get a sense of you being in touch with that right now.
Yeah, I struggle with bringing it back. That's a struggle for me, for sure.
Where does the struggle come from, It usually comes from your thinking, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Incessant thinking.
Right. And so objectify your thinking. These are the thoughts I have that I can't get back to my meditation retreat. What's wrong with me? I should be able to do that, but that meditation retreat is not staying with me. Well, if that's what is occupying your mind, then you're not going to get back to your meditation retreat. But if you stop and say, oh, that's the package of negative thoughts about my meditation not being present for me, I'm not that. That's a separate process of my mind. I'm the witness to that. Who is the witness? Where is the witness? The witness is anywhere. It's totally omniscient. That's me as much or more, actually, than that package of negative imagination that can take us over at any time when we confuse ourselves with our thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is from Lanid Benjamin. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So you mentioned radical surrender and radical kindness and radical acceptance. I'm okay with that. Radical kindness is still harder, but the hardest for me is radical forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I can be good 99% of the time, even 99.9%, and then it's like almost like an impulse of reactivity, or it's an impulse basically of a reaction to some,
Right. Yeah.
I'm not in the moment of forgiveness. I'm not able to,
Yeah.
So no matter, even with meditations and working, it's that moment is sort of like not in control.
Yeah.
Any tips to help with that?
Well, that's the most difficult one, for sure. Those are from my first book, How to Survive Life and Death is what it's called. Those are the 3 tips for happiness that I have in that. And that's the most difficult one, of course, because lots of times it's totally justified. Something awful has happened. Somebody has done something to you that they should not have done, that was wrong. Life is treating us in a way that's unfair, in a way right now. Why are we all trapped inside of our homes? We're not able to go out and hug each other and mess around, do whatever we want to do and stuff anymore for the time being. And it's true. It's not good. We identify with one another in that respect because everyone is going through that. We identify with people who have done bad things to us because I have done bad things to people, and I recognize that. Maybe not as bad, maybe I'm not as bad as they are, but I am a package of the karma that I came into this life with. My genes, maybe my past lives, if you believe in such things, and then the experiences, the things that I've created in my life. This is this kind of package of karmic information that I am. And I am expressing life through that, through my experiences. So when somebody that you're having trouble forgiving is being particularly unforgivable, you can look at them as a package of karma, their own package of karma, their experiences, the trauma of their childhood, the experiences of joy or pain, their genes, what their culture is. You see that all, and you realize that they are expressing what they have to express. They're being who they have to be. And maybe it's an asshole, pardon my French, and I can identify with that. I can see that they need to be doing that. And I can forgive them the fact that they are limited by their human form. They are trapped, as I am, in the constraints of human perception, of human need, of human expression. And so they're doing what they have to be doing. If I were an angel in heaven, for example, I would be able to do that real easily because that's how they all are. That's how all the angels are. They look at people and they just recognize, okay, this person is being terrible because they have to be terrible. I understand that. That's where they are karmically. It's okay. I don't enjoy it. I don't appreciate it, but I can forgive them for their need to be what they need to be. And so it is that sort of elaborate process. It's not easy, and it can be particularly difficult if there's real injury going on, in fact, impossible at the time. It may take a long time. It may be something that spontaneously happens over a long time as you learn to let go of it and not carry somebody else's baggage around with you like it's your own. So that's always a tough one.
Thank you, Robert. Next question is from Wesley. Wesley asks, during meditation, the things one feels and senses, are those things real or unreal?
Well, the Buddhist concept of things arising out of emptiness, coming into being, and then going back into emptiness is true of our entire life. Certainly, spiritual experience is always anecdotal. There's no empirical proof for any of it. And the miracle of all these particles coming together and forming me or forming you, forming the world that we see, is pretty fantastic. That we're on a tiny planet floating around in an expanse of outer space. Is it real? It's an expression of divine consciousness, as you or I both are. Now, sitting in meditation, one way to sit in meditation, I call it physical meditation, which is you enter into the processes within your body. You stop and close your eyes, and inside of your eyes, it's not dark. There's a sort of action going on. You breathe in, you breathe out. As you get quieter, you might feel the blood coursing through your body. Those things are real, right? They're real manifestations of being in this form, of that divine consciousness coming through this form, expressing itself as a human being. So yes, in that sense, they're quite real. That you can change them and that you can form them, your experience, by intention or by practice or by actions. Then they become more plastic, and then their reality is kind of dependent on you, right? Rather than make believe, you believe and make, kind of, the whole power of intention type thing. So I hope that answers the reality question.
Thank you. The last question is going to be from Jess. And after the question, we will move to the poem and then meditation and breakout rooms. Jess, go ahead. Jess, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, there is Jess. Okay, let me go ahead and read the question. Jess asks, which do you find had a greater impact on your perspective and appreciation for life? Your multiple near-death experiences or your meditation practice?
You know, I got to say it was my meditation practice, because I had these experiences roughly equally spaced over a 15-year period of my life. And as is the case with many, as is not the case with many near-death experiencers, one did not do it for me. I wasn't transformed because of my out-of-body experience, nor did my life completely change because I had a life review near-death experience. Maybe a little bit more in my third, which was a forced back into this life because I have a purpose kind of an experience. But I still was constrained or defined by my relation to the world through my thinking, through being this person that I thought that I was and had to be, this imaginary depiction of myself or story of myself that I thought other people had of me. Of course, you find out that other people don't necessarily have the same story of you as you have for yourself. But it wasn't until I started meditating that all of those things fell away. And this kind of clear bead at the center, as Rumi would say, started to reveal itself to me. So the meditation practice, it doesn't hurt to get your ass kicked real good 3 or 4 times. But the meditation practice was really the big difference for me.
Thank you. There is one more question, and let me go ahead and Sanjay, can you go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. So I noticed that your personal philosophy seems to stem from elements of Hinduism and Buddhism. Is either of these a source of your beliefs and approaches to life? If so, how do you reconcile the fact that when others are harming us, especially harming us greatly, that they're also obstructing and restricting us from following our full karmic path?
Yeah, by the way, also, I would say Gnosticism would be a big part of that too, whose mythology is very resonant to me. When people are being particularly, my third near-death experience, and I'll just tell you this very briefly, what it was that I was assaulted by a skinhead who, in a small town in Arizona, who thought that I had just come from New York City, and he thought that I was a gay city guy or something, which is half right. And he assaulted me, and I ended up in an altercation with him where I got the better of him. And afterwards, I didn't realize there was a whole bunch of skinheads, and they ambushed me and knocked me unconscious and stomped and kicked me for about an hour or so while I was unconscious. And I suffered, pretty extreme trauma physically. So I had to come to terms with a lot of those kinds of things that we're talking about. Maybe because of that, and because of the realization that passing from this world to the next is just like stepping into another room. It's easy, it's comfortable, and it happens for certain, that's in my experience. I have this knowledge that a lot of people don't necessarily have or really want, You probably don't really want that experience to inform what you're talking about. Because otherwise, I have to meditate until I attain a state of transcendent unity that permits me to discard whatever evil thoughts I'm having about a person, or whatever justified thoughts I'm having about a person, justified anger at something awful happening to me, and be able to open my heart to forgive them and to allow and accept what is really unacceptable. And there are parts of our life that are unacceptable at the time that we're in them. This too shall pass, and we have to just hold on to that understanding and the realization that the worst thing that could happen is that I'm going to die from this. And in my experience, we only die to the specific form that we're in. So.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
So now we will do a transition with a poem Taylor, go ahead. Taylor, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay. This poem is an old Native American elder story rendered into English by David Wagner, and it's called Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes, listen. It answers, I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you.
Thank you, Taylor. All right, let's proceed to Robert again. Robert, if you could lead us into a meditation. You need to unmute yourself.
I wanted to quickly mention that reminds me of a Carl Jung story. Carl Jung had a friend for many years, Hopi, named Ochwe Bianco, White Lake, that he visited with. And he was talking to White Lake about consciousness at one point, and White Lake said that, we think that the white man is crazy because he's always thinking with this. And Carl Jung said, well, what do you think with? And he went like this, right? The heart is a cognizant organ. I'd like to start the meditation. I'm going to hopefully take us through these three types of meditation, which I call analytical, physical, and devotional. So first of all, let's close our eyes. Imagine that golden string up through your spine, up through the top of your head. Let your shoulders hang off of your neck like a rack, and keep your chin up a little bit. And we'll take a couple deep breaths in and out. In and out. In analytical meditation, we're entering into this theater of the mind where our thoughts arise and we witness them. So instead of just letting any thoughts arise right now, I'd like to introduce this one small thought. This one small thought is what I'd like you to think about. This one small thought. I'm only thinking about this one small thought. This one small thought. It's all I have. This one small thought. Now allow some space in between this one small thought. This one small thought. This one small thought. Now enter into the space in between and try to hold yourself there. This one small thought is all I have. This one small thought. This one small thought. In the space in between this one small thought that we have, there's a kind of a luminous energy. There's a sort of a doorway. It's almost like holding your breath to hold your thoughts. But in that space, there's a kind of clarifying freshness that occurs. This one small thought, this one small thought, and now the space in between. This one small thought. this one small thought. Enter into the space in between your thoughts when you're sitting in analytical meditation, and try to expand that. Try to spread it out, occupy it. Stick your head through that window if you can. That's where the Bodhi illumination is. That's where gnosis is, moksha. The second kind of meditation is, I'll give you, is physical meditation. We have our eyes closed right now, and as you look into your closed eyelids, what do you see? It's not jet black, is it? There's a kind of dance going on, sort of wavering fields of effervescent energy, kind of. Maybe it has to do with the room outside of you, maybe not. You are, in a way, looking into the process that's happening inside of your body. Now, center for a moment. Focus on the experience of inside of your body. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Look into the darkness that isn't dark. Feel your fingers, the tingling of your fingers. Maybe you have a little ache from sitting this way. Go right into it. Enter into that. Breathe in. Breathe out. Within these physical systems, there is a path to a meditative, transcendent unity. Can be experienced that way. If you enter in and you stay there, you'll get there. The third form of meditation I'd like to suggest is what I call devotional meditation. Hinduism is bhakti meditation. And that is that you pick a subject, a focus of your devotion. For example, in Buddhism, you might sit and imagine yourself sitting directly across from the Buddha. He's sitting right across from you right now in exactly the same position, like a mirror. He's got fantastic chakra energy. And you can compare straight across from his crown chakra to his third eye and follow all the way down, reflecting the Buddha. You might do what's called japa, which would be to chant a mantra in devotion, the prayer of your choice. Om. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. The Avalokiteshvara's mantra of love and compassion. Pick a source of divine consciousness. Hold that in your heart and in your mind. Chant a prayer, chant a song. And end this with great gratitude, the great opportunity to share this energy with all of you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Robert. That was wonderful.